Welcome back to Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and it's the playoffs. The time where basically all the great things and the great memories of people are made. The legends are made in playoffs. And here with me on this episode to go over a few of the different things that are going on, the different teams, and kind of talk about the playoffs in general. I have Chief Trends Officer at the Caesar Sportsbook, Mr. Trey Wingo. What's going on, man?
Hey, Mike, good to see you again. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Now, I've got to start off with the AFC South, of course. There was the de facto playoff game. Yeah, I hear you. It was a de facto playoff game this past weekend between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. The Jaguars winning out the game, winning at home. You see all that teal and waving towels and things like that. And they end the season winning 5 straight, while the Titans end the season losing 7 straight. Did you see that coming for the Tennessee Titans?
No, absolutely not. They were 7-3, and we're finding a way to get it done. I in no way, shape, or form did I think that they were going to end the season on a 7-game losing streak. Look, I'm a big believer in Mike Vrabel. This is the first time in his coaching career that he's had a losing record. I did not see that at all. It's just been an absolute disaster. And you have to think it started in the offseason with the decision to not pay A.J. Brown and trade him away and get draft capital and pick Treylon Burks. I like Treylon Burks. I liked him out of the draft. I think eventually he's going to be a good player. But, you know, the Titans have had all kinds of issues at quarterback. And, it got so bad that they went and got Joshua Dobbs off somebody else's practice squad to start the last few games of the season. So the biggest issue for the Titans, in my mind, is who's your quarterback and how committed are you to him?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, I do know this. Malik Willis, he's definitely not ready just yet. And everyone kind of knew he wouldn't be ready right then and there. It's just a matter of, do they kind of believe in kind of getting him ready, or do they go with another veteran and him, or keep Dobbs and him, or whatever they go? But, enough about the Titans right now. Let's talk about the Jaguars. 5 in a row. Trevor Lawrence looking like the number 1 pick everyone thought he would be. And they're streaking to the playoffs. I mean, wow. No one really expected to see this. No one expected to see it come together so fast for Doug Peterson. But do you see them continuing with this momentum, seeing that they're taking on the Chargers at home this Saturday night?
Yeah. I mean, they played week 3, and they absolutely pounded the Chargers in week 3 at SoFi, 38-10. Jacksonville went in there as a 6.5-point underdog. And I think that Jacksonville is a much better team now than they were then. But everything fell apart for the Chargers in that game. And that was the first game after Justin Herbert had that fractured rib cartilage in the loss at Arrowhead to the Kansas City Chiefs. Jacksonville, let's start with Trevor Lawrence, right? Like, his rookie season was very similar to Zach Wilson's. Wasn't great. And then they started this season not great. And what I loved about Trevor is that he said at one point, I think it was after the London game, he's like, I can't be this bad. I've got to be better. And he sort of rededicated himself to figuring out what was going on and why it wasn't working. And you can't overemphasize the difference of having a real head coach. Makes a difference in the development, especially of a young quarterback. Doug Peterson has proven himself to be a very good quarterback coach as a head coach in the NFL. I mean, for God's sakes, he won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles against the Patriots. When Tom Brady, if you go look at the numbers, Tom Brady had statistically the best Super Bowl of his career. He threw for 300 yards in the first half. He threw for almost 500 in the game. And, they still found a way to win 41-33. We can't emphasize enough how poorly coached the Jags were last year and how poorly Trevor was handled, and the difference in Trevor this year. They know this team. They know they can beat this team, and they get them at home this time. If Trevor hadn't hit, every single person would have to reevaluate how they draft a quarterback and what they think are the traits. Because from Trevor's rookie year, freshman year at Clemson, what did everyone say? This is a kid who could play right away. There are very few guys that could come out of high school and play in the NFL. this might be that Ed Oliver was thought of that way because he was just a phenomenal freak show at defensive tackle. Trevor looked like he was 24 when he was 18. His body was that way. He was tall and lean and muscular, and he had all those things. And, if he had been a bust, I think it would have been more about the franchise failing him than him failing the franchise. So Trevor is rounding into shape, being the receiver or being the quarterback that he should be. Look what happens when you get him a Christian Kirk. And everybody criticized that deal. That turned out to be a great deal for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Etienne, I will say, I thought that was a wasted first-round pick because you had James Robinson there, who was performing as an undrafted running back, which means you could have a better cost control. Travis Etienne's been fantastic. Zay Jones has been great. Evan Ingram has been great. They picked up a lot of questionable decisions in the offseason, and almost to a T they've worked out. So I think they have something building in Jacksonville with the pieces around Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson as his head coach.
Now, I'm going to say this. If they get past the Los Angeles Chargers, what do you think about them potentially making a run a la the Cincinnati Bengals?
No. No. I mean, because look, they're a team that's on the rise, and they're a team that's going to be around in the future. The Bengals, Bills, and Chiefs are just head and shoulders above everybody else in the AFC. It would not surprise me if either one of those three teams not only represented the AFC, but won the Super Bowl. I mean, there are 5 really good teams in the postseason this year, and you don't really say that, right? You don't really say ever going into postseason, there are 5 really good teams. San Francisco comes into the playoffs on a 10-game winning streak. The Eagles have been arguably the most dominant football team, or the most consistent football team all year. They only lost when Jalen Hurts was out and Gardner Minshew had to play. They have 4 guys on that Philadelphia defense that have at least 10 sacks. I think that's a first in the Super Bowl era. 4 guys with double-digit sacks. That's really impressive. They obviously have all the weapons they need on the outside, and Miles Sanders is good enough to run behind arguably the best offensive line in football. So the Jags, I think they can absolutely beat the Chargers, but then who they play next, it's going to be kicking it up a notch.
Right, definitely. Now, another team that made the playoffs on the last weekend of the NFL football season is the Seattle Seahawks. Now, an improbable run making it to the playoffs because everyone, when they traded Russell Wilson, no one thought they would have enough. And of course, Geno Smith, they wrote him off and he didn't write back. And he definitely didn't write back to precision the way he played this year. Along with that defense as well. They have a tough task ahead of them. Like you mentioned, the San Francisco 49ers this weekend. Saturday afternoon, to be exact.
Yeah.
Do you give them any chance to win that game against the 49ers? I know it's you face a team the third time and the 49ers beat them the first 2 times, but do you give them a chance to potentially win that game?
I give them a puncher's chance. That's the best way to say it. People always say, it's hard to beat a team 3 times. Not really. If you beat them the first 2 times, you should probably beat them the third time. You know what I mean? And San Francisco has already beaten them twice. But I want to talk about San Francisco for a second because not only do they come in hot, they've won 10 straight. Where's the number here? Let me find it. They're 8-0 in Santa Clara as a favorite and 7-1 against the spread. They're just really, really good. They're playing at home. They're 8-0 straight up, 7-1 against the spread as home favorites this season. But they also took care of business in their division. They swept the division, okay? The average margin of victory for the 49ers in NFC West games this year was 18.8 points per game. So suddenly being a double-digit favorite doesn't seem that out of line. And Seattle's defense loves to give up tons of yards, and they've done that all year. And, Brock Purdy's such an amazing story, but they don't ask Brock to do a lot. They're like the 49ers are the only team in the NFL that says, hey, their quarterback, hey, just don't screw it up. Okay, we're good. We got a great defense. We probably got the defensive player of the year, Nick Bosa. By the way, the 49ers have not lost since Christian McCaffrey became a starter, 10-0. And they have enough weapons on offense, whether it's Christian McCaffrey or Debo, who's back and healthy, or Brendan Ayuk and George Kittle. Look at the difference in George Kittle's numbers pre-Christian McCaffrey, post-Christian McCaffrey. With everything that Christian McCaffrey can do, he attracts a lot of attention, and that opens up Debo and Ayuk and Kittle. Joel, look at Kittle's numbers pre-trade, post-trade. They're absolutely remarkable. So this is just a tough spot. Sometimes another team just has your number. Like the Cowboys a few years ago, they won the division and they swept the Eagles, and they had to play the Eagles again in the first round on the wild card weekend. And people are like, I don't know, it's tough. They beat them by like 25 points. This is just a bad matchup for Seattle. That's the simplest way to put it. And it takes nothing away from Geno Smith. Like Geno Smith should be the comeback player of the year. It's been remarkable. The completion percentage that he had this year is insane. And he now has the record for most passing yards in a single season. Geno Smith in year 10. It's remarkable.
Yeah, definitely is. And hopefully the Seattle Seahawks and him can come together on an extension or something this offseason, hopefully. Yeah. Now, we're going to move on to another team that's a favorite, and you mentioned them earlier, and that's the Buffalo Bills. So, of course, they had an emotional win this past weekend. DeMar Hamlin, a lot of threes everywhere, a lot of clothing with DeMar Hamlin on it. And, of course, you had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns from Naeem Hines. You had explosive plays in the passing game. And they just you just saw the emotion and just the play that kind of carried on from them. Now, with that emotion, of course, a lot of that is tied up again into DeMar Hamlin and just all the different things that they went through on that Monday night. Do you expect them to kind of carry that emotion and that to kind of carry them through the playoffs, even though they were expected to kind of maneuver through the playoffs and be there in the end?
Well, the emotion is hard to carry, right? And if you look even at the game against the Patriots, like they needed both of those touchdowns because they were flat for a large part of that game. The Patriots were in that game, and if they hadn't gotten those 2 returns, I don't know how that game would have played out. You just when you go through a life event, like a real life situation, now forget football, like a real life and death situation, sometimes it has a very weird toll on your team. And that game couldn't have started at a higher emotional output with the opening kickoff return. By the way, I don't know if you heard this, that was the first kick return for a touchdown in Bills history in 3 years and 3 months. And DeMar Hamlin's number is 3. Like, you can't write this stuff, okay? The emotion was just peaking. It's almost impossible to keep that energy level up for 4 quarters or 60 minutes. So, the emotions sort of got to them a little bit, and they needed that. I don't know if they can carry that all the way through the entire postseason, but I don't think it's going to be a problem against Miami because Tua's not playing, and I'm happy that Tua's not playing for Tua. I know it sucks for the Dolphins in the short term, but if you want Tua to be your quarterback, you need him to have a healthy life. And, that's the reason at Caesars Sportsbook, the line jumped from, I think the Bills were a 9-point favorite to 13 now. And the Dolphins just have a lot of things going against them in this game. They haven't won a postseason game in 21 seasons. The game time temperature is going to be in the 30s. Here's the Dolphins franchise record in postseason games when the kickoff temperature is below 40, 0-6. Here's the Bills record at home in playoff games when the game time temperature is below 40, 10-0. They've never lost a home playoff game in those kind of conditions, and I don't expect them to lose to a Skylar Thompson-led Miami Dolphins team on wildcard weekend.
And what else is not helping them is Raheem Mostert has a broken thumb, so their top running back too.
It's a mess. It's a mess. I mean, give Mike McDaniel all the credit in the world for finding a way to navigate. I mean, the Dolphins started with 3 straight wins, then lost 3 straight when Tua was out for the first time. Then they won 5 in a row, and then they lost 5 in a row. So they have been the ultimate, up and down team. They won that last one to get into the postseason against the Jets, and kudos to them. But they are facing enormous odds in this game in Buffalo.
Definitely. And then, it would be an amazing thing if they were to win that game. But I just think with all the inspiration and then just the play of the Buffalo Bills, I don't see them pulling it out at all either. Now, another team I want to talk about is the Minnesota Vikings. Now, this team, a lot of people either love this team or hate this team, which is kind of similar to how people feel about their quarterback, Kirk Cousins. So this team is kind of up and down like a roller coaster as well, but they do it during games. They basically will play down the competition, and then the second half will perk up and then mess around and come back. Now, what is your level of trust for this team in the playoffs? They open up against the New York Giants, so that's going to be an interesting one. Now, they won, if you remember, they won that game by a 61-yard field goal after they had to come back against the New York Giants at that time. So,
yeah,
what are
three
your
weeks
thoughts?
ago. That was 3 weeks ago, and they needed a franchise record 61-yard field goal. Look, the Vikings are never going to be anybody's favorite, right? They're never going to be the team that everyone has all in. They lost 40-3 at home to the Dallas Cowboys. They lost, 41-17 or 41-10 to Green Bay. And only the Colts could be the team that gave away a 33-point lead to Minnesota at home, okay? That's why people think that the Vikings aren't really good. And, oh, by the way, their pass defense is terrible. Not that that's a strength of the Giants in any way, shape, or form, their passing game. But these are the real things that go on with the Minnesota Vikings. It would not surprise me if they won this game. They've won 15 straight games as a favorite. But would I be shocked if the Giants found a way to win? Absolutely not. Look, the Giants are a limited football team. They don't have a lot of ways to beat you, but yet they found a way to win a lot of games. And I think they've covered 10 of 12 times as an underdog this season with 6 outright wins. They'll give you everything they have. And the Vikings find a way to keep everything close, right? Their record of one-score games is just ridiculous, how many straight victories they've won in one-score games. So they're never going to blow anybody away, but they're going to be in every game. The question is, will they make the play to win? And I think that they, in all likelihood, they will, but I don't have a lot of faith in Minnesota going forward because then you're dealing with a lot different teams. Like if the Cowboys beat the Bucs, can they find a way to play better against Dallas? And then you're going to talk about San Francisco and Philadelphia Eagles. Then the competition gets up. Even if they have to play the Bucs, who, by the way, I think can beat the Dallas Cowboys. Tom Brady's got a pretty good postseason record. So we'll see what happens.
Well, since you brought him up, I do want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, of course, it's America's team versus Tom Brady is kind of how I'm building it. So
America's hero, Tom Brady, against America's team. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So in this game, of course, the Bucks season has been a roller coaster, as well. They've been up and down during games, and it just they haven't resembled the team that everyone thought they would be, especially on defense with Devin White and David at the linebacker. But that's another story. But offensively, they've just been a mash unit as well, and they're going against a Cowboys defense that's not good against the run. But you do have Trayvon Diggs, and I'm looking forward to the Trayvon Diggs versus Mike Evans matchup, by the way. But What can you just say about this matchup? I mean, I can see both different ways that both teams can win this game, but it's just a lot going on, and a lot has to go on for both teams to win, in my opinion.
Yeah, here's the situation. Okay, these two teams started the year against each other. Week 1, Tampa Bay Bucks and Tom Brady went to Jerry World, AT&T Stadium, and won 19-3. Dak got hurt, all that kind of stuff, and entered in Cooper Rush for 5 games. The Bucks. This is what's really weird. The Bucks started that game as a 2.5-point favorite at Caesars Sportsbook on the road, and won 19-3. Playoff game is in Tampa, and they're 2.5-point underdogs to the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the Dallas Cowboys, to me, are a team that you cannot trust. You cannot trust them. They needed a scoring play at the last second to beat the Texans. In Jacksonville, late in the season, they had leads of 14-0, 21-7, 24-10, 27-10. Found a way to lose that game. And the Cowboys took to the field in Week 18, Mike, with everything on the line. They still had the possibility to not only win the NFC East, but potentially get the number 1 seed in the NFC. And they were flatter than day-old beer. Okay? They were awful in that loss to the Commanders. But let's extrapolate what that means going forward. Because this game is going to be outdoors on grass. The Cowboys this year, outdoors on grass, not great, Bob. They lost in Philadelphia outdoors on grass. They lost, as I just mentioned, in Jacksonville outdoors on grass. They lost to the Commanders outdoors on grass. They did beat the Tennessee Titans, as you well know, on that Thursday night game, but that was Joshua Dobbs making the first start of his NFL career. This is a Cowboys defense, and you mentioned Diggs, that's specifically on speed. They fly to the football, whether it's Tank Lawrence and everybody else on that defensive line, whether it's linebackers like Micah and Van Der Esch, or everybody in that secondary, whether it's Curse, Wilson, Diggs. They fly to the football. They do not fly as fast when they're playing outdoors on grass. If I'm the Bucks, I grow the grass as long as we can make it for this game. You remember the Reggie Bush Notre Dame game all those years ago with the Bush push game?
Yes, sir.
The grass at Notre Dame Stadium looked like it was a foot high. Okay, to try and slow down Mike Williams, Matt Leinart, Lendell White, Mike Williams, Reggie Bush, all those awesome weapons that USC had. The Cowboys also, just take a guess. Let's see if we can have some fun here. You want to guess the year, the last time the Cowboys won a road playoff game? Just off the top of your head?
It's got to be the 90s.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Want to guess a year?
93.
Oh, you're close. 92. The last road playoff win for the Dallas Cowboys was the NFC Championship game in San Francisco.
Yep.
That really started the Cowboys' decade of dominance when they won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. They've lost 8 straight road playoff games. That ties 4 other teams for the longest streak in NFL history. And if they lose Monday night, they would have the record as the longest road playoff losing streak in the history of the NFL. We saw what happened last year when they got to the postseason against San Francisco. They thought a quarterback draw as time was running out was a good idea. That was horrendous. You cannot trust these Dallas Cowboys. I'm not saying you have a bunch of trust in the Bucs, but I trust Tom Brady. I trust Tom Brady to get whatever you can out of Tampa Bay. And the Bucs are actually playing better now than they have all year. The Cowboys looked very flat down the stretch. And, I just don't have a lot of faith in them.
Totally understand. Now, I want to jump back to the Lamar-less Baltimore Ravens, and they're taking on the Bengals. Now, Lamar Jackson didn't practice, and it's looking like he's more than likely not going to play this weekend. And, the Ravens offense, it struggles without Lamar Jackson. So in this game, honestly, it would be the defense having to try to pick them up against a Cincinnati Bengals offense with with Jamar Chase, with T. Higgins, with Joe Mixon, and with Joe Burrow. Honestly,
and
of course you got no Hayden Hurst
and Boyd, all those guys, and Hayden Hurst. Look, the Bengals come in red hot. They have won 8 straight games. That ties the franchise record. The Bengals are really good with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is just the 6th quarterback in the Super Bowl era to cover in his first 4 postseason starts. The Ravens are terrible right now. They're just banged up. They've averaged 13 points in their last 5 games. 13 points. They lost 3 of them. They are nowhere without Lamar. And I think we have to acknowledge that there's probably something else besides a knee injury that is keeping Lamar off the field, right? This thing was supposed to be a 3-week injury. If he doesn't play on Sunday, it's a 6-week injury. That doesn't happen a lot. I think there are other factors at play here, and the Ravens have sort of alluded to that. It just goes back to the contract situation. And, there's definitely not the greatest of feelings right now between Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. It is weird having to play the same game in the same stadium against the same team 2 weeks in a row. Sometimes that can go sideways, but I just don't know if the Ravens have any firepower. For them to win the game, you mentioned it, the defense is going to have to play lights out. Quite frankly, they're going to have to take some people out if they're going to win that game. If the Bengals get through, I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying football happens. If the Bengals get through this game healthy, I don't see a lot of ways the Ravens can win.
Yeah, the only way I would see the Ravens winning is like I mentioned, the defense, and then J.K. Dobbins just goes absolutely crazy. That'd be the only thing I could. Yeah, and him and Mark Andrews, which they're going to probably double team Mark Andrews, and they don't have anybody else out there because Bateman's out, and they have another wide receiver that's out as well. So, yeah, they do have Sammy Watkins though, but no, I'm just kidding. He's not really going to do much.
Good for them.
Right. But of course, I want to end the show talking about the Chiefs and the Eagles. The Chiefs and the Eagles are sitting at home right now, resting and watching all the teams play. Now, last year in the Super Bowl, you did not have a team that was resting the first week play in the Super Bowl. What do you
Yeah.
think the odds are that these two teams could potentially meet, or one of them make it to the Super Bowl this year? Because I don't have that ultimate faith that a bye week is a good thing, to be honest.
Well, I think a bye week is a good thing, but I think you have to understand how to use the bye week, right? That's the most important thing. Any team, like it, in one of the crazy scenarios after the Bengals Bills game was nullied because of the DeMar Hamlin situation. Thank God he's doing great. It's just continued to be great news. One of the thoughts that the NFL was throwing around, hey, if you get the number one seed, you can have your choice. You can have home field advantage, or you can take the bye. And I was like, well, that's dumb, because everybody would rather only play 2 games to get to the Super Bowl than 3, even if they're all at your place. I mean, that's math. You know what I mean? So I think the bye is important. Home field is not as important as it used to be. Like, that's a thing, right? I mean, Cincinnati was down 14 points in the first half against Kansas City in the AFC Championship game last year and came back to win. We haven't had a 1 seed win a Super Bowl since the Philadelphia Eagles, with their backup quarterback, beat the Tom Brady-led Patriots in Super Bowl 52. And that was Tom Brady's best Super Bowl statistically. He threw for 300 yards in the first half of that game, threw for almost 500 in the game. And the Eagles won 41-33. The idea of being a 1 seed has sort of diminished. But any team, especially after a 17-week season, I'll take the bye. Like, give me that bye just for rest. The Chiefs come into this very healthy. Like, they come in, it's remarkable. The Chiefs they're going to get Mecole Hardman back. They're going to have their full complement of everybody on defense. Their rookie corners have played a lot better down the stretch. Chris Jones, he won't win Defensive Player of the Year, but if Bosa didn't have his year, I think Chris Jones would win Defensive Player of the Year. Like, the Chiefs are the only team to me that you can say they have a legitimate MVP candidate in Patrick Mahomes, who I think he's going to win it easily. They have a legitimate Offensive Player of the Year in Travis Kelce, and they have a legitimate Defensive Player of the Year in Chris Jones. The 49ers have the Defensive Player of the Year, but they don't have an MVP, and I don't think they have an Offensive Player of the Year. Maybe Christian McCaffrey. They're 10-0. The Bengals have an MVP in Joe Burrow. They have an Offensive Player of the Year in Jamar Chase. They don't have the one war daddy on defense. They have a good defense. Like, I really like their defense, but they don't have the one guy that can wreck it for you. The Chiefs have 3 elite players, and everybody else needs to carry their weight. Philadelphia is a more complete team. They are top to bottom. I mean, Mike, they have 4 guys that had 10 sacks this season. That's a first in the Super Bowl era. 4 different dudes with double-digit sacks. That's really impressive. But Lane Johnson, we don't know what his status is for the season. He might not only be the best right tackle in football, he might be the best tackle in football. And we don't know what his status is for this game. The Chiefs are healthier than almost anybody, and they get the bye week. I think it's massive. The Eagles are going to have to prove that they can be what they were in the regular season, and that Jalen Hurts that we saw last year in that loss to Tampa, where everything was just a little behind, right? Everything was different. Now, granted, it's a different team. He's more experienced, and they have A.J. Brown on the other side of Devontae Smith. But I think we're going to need to see that Jalen Hurts can kick it up a notch and be way better. And I think he will be, because of the weapons around him, way better than he was last year. Because that loss to Tampa last year in the wild card round, that was a painful watch. It was a painful watch.
Definitely a painful watch. And, but hopefully everyone watching and listening to this show didn't think it was very painful at all. Hopefully they thought it was enjoyable. No. But I want to thank you. We have reached the end of the show. I want to thank you for your time, Mr. Trey Wingo. Thank you for your knowledge as well. And I'm going to give you the floor to kind of tell everyone what you're working on, where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Obviously, I do a lot of work with Caesar Sports. I'm the Chief Trends Officer and Brand Ambassador there. You can follow all the stuff we do for them called Trey's Trends by following at Caesar Sports or at my Twitter account at Wingos. Also work for Pro Football Network. You can find them at PFN365 on Twitter and Instagram. Do a lot of work with them. Just did a show with them before I came on and did it with you. Also work with a 33rd Team, which is really a lot of fun. It's a bunch of former NFL coaches and players I do a lot of post-game analysis for them. We did something with Robbie Gould yesterday talking about the 49ers and his motivation going into what he hopes will be a third Super Bowl run in his career. Also work with the PGA Tour, do some stuff with them. And then, of course, the podcast, Half Forgotten History. We just wrapped season 8. Season 9 is going to be coming down the pike a little later on. We're very excited about that. You can get all my podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. It's called Half Forgotten History, or on my YouTube page, Trey Wingo Presents. You can find all my stuff there as well.
All right. Well, I thank you again for your time. I thank everyone for tuning in to Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.